Hello, welcome to today's video. Today we're going to review the changes that Frostgrave 2.0 is putting into the system. Now before we get started though, I want to say this kind of as an open compliment to Osprey Publishing and the author. When they went from 1.0 to 2.0, they made sure all of the supplements that you've bought before are still relevant and can be used. So you're not going to have to discard those or replace them in the future. You can actually still use them. So let's kind of walk through and see what are the main differences. Now what I'm not going to do today is actually walk through the differences in the different spell wizard schools. I'm going to save those for separate videos individually, because I want to spend some time looking at each one individually. I'm sure you don't care necessarily about all the changes, and this way you can actually you'll be able to target the specific schools you're interested in looking at the changes for. Alright, but let's see what they've done to Frostgrave when they released 2.0. Alright, so the first thing I want to show you though, just to get the feel, is the thickness. This is the first edition, and the second edition is at least half as large. And that is because they have actually put in a little bit more clarifying text to the rules, made it a little more understandable, but they've also added 10 new scenarios. So even if you don't care about the changes in the edition, the 10 new scenarios might very well be a reason just to get the book for that. Just adding 10 scenarios to your list. Alright, so let's kind of go through. I've got my notes here I'm going to go ahead and refer to occasionally. But the format of the book is laid out just like the original. So we of course begin with the wizards and then apprentices and warbands, right? So the major change when it comes to the wizards and the warbands really revolves around the apprentice and soldiers and some of the costs. Now, a couple things. When you're building a wizard and apprentice, they're able to have a certain number of item slots. Wizards are 5, apprentices are 4. One thing they've done is you're able to equip them with their first dagger without taking up one of those item slots. It used to be dagger would count against those 5 or 4 item slots, meaning you couldn't carry as many nifty things like potions and scrolls with you as you maybe have hoped. But in addition to that one little change, they actually changed apprentices quite a bit in a good way. Their stat line is improved. Here, take a look. This is the stat line now, and you'll see they're still -2 fight, -2 wisdom, but they don't have a penalty to shooting and they don't have a penalty to health as big as it was before. It used to be -4, now it's only -2. So essentially your apprentice is listed now as a wizard level -6 instead of -10. And that actually keep your apprentices alive a little bit longer at the beginning of the game. Over and above that, they actually made the wizard's apprentice cheaper. It only costs 100 instead of 200 gold crowns. Now, which is a good thing considering you only get 400 gold crowns now to start a warband instead of the 500 from before. So that's kind of where the savings you get less gold, but you spend less gold on an apprentice. However, if you're one of those players who like to start the campaign without without an apprentice, you're going to have a tougher time affording the larger numbers of good quality soldiers. Now, having mentioned soldiers, they made a big change here. You still can only have 8 soldiers in your warband, but they've broken the warband into 2 types, or soldiers into 2 types: standard and specialists. Essentially, your standards are the lowest ones on the original list. So that would be your thief and a thug, your infantryman, your men-at-arms, and your war dog. And they actually even threw the apothecary into this for some reason, which is actually a good thing. And you can have as many of those as you want. All of the other all the other soldiers in the main rulebook are specialists, and you can only have 4 in your warband. 4 specialists. So there's no more, spamming knights and treasure hunters. I used to love running 3 treasure hunters and a couple rangers, crossbowmen or 2, or not crossbowmen, marksmen or 2. And then some guys are like, they run 5, 6 barbarians, right? Nope. Max is 4 specialists in total of any combination. So that's going to definitely make it easier for starting warbands to kind of meet each other on an even playing field. A lot of the problems that I've seen in the starting war bands was someone would try to min-max something and someone else wouldn't, and having all those extra what are now called specialists really did tip the balance into their favor, and that really kind of made the game a little less fun. So that's a big deal. Now I want to talk at the end a little more about some of the other supplement soldiers and how they broke those up, because those are separately dealt with toward the end of the book. All right, another cool thing about all of these soldiers is the price changes. Now, essentially, when you look at the cost, here I'll go ahead and put a picture up here of the two different pictures of cost tables. You'll notice that thugs and thieves are now free. You don't have to spend a single gold crown on your soldiers. You can get all thugs or all thieves. And now, will that be effective or not? I don't know. But starting warband, having 400, or let's just say you buy an apprentice, of 300 free gold crowns to spend to upgrade your base right away, after the first game, or buy some magic items at the first game, that might be useful. You can always, get what you earned from that particular scenario and spend it on real soldiers to replace the ones that end up dying. So, all right, so let's take a look. Essentially, when you come to the soldiers, let's just go to the standards here. The standards, like I said, Thief and Thug are free. 10 gold crowns still for the Warhound, no change there. The infantryman is still 50. But what they did with the men-at-arms is they went from 80 down to 75. And also with the apothecary, it went from 100 gold now down to 75. So that's pretty affordable. And he still comes with a free health potion. He can still, give the health potion to someone who's actually on the table for the immediate benefit. Okay, but now let's look at the soldier specialist table. You'll see this is actually all of them went up in price. Okay, your archer and crossbowmen, who were 50 gold each before, are now 75. Your treasure hunter was 80, he's now 100. Tracker is also 100. The Knight and Templar, which were 100 each, are now 125. So that's pretty expensive. The Ranger has gone up with the Marksman and Barbarian as well, all 125. That's a lot of cash to start with a warband. So you want to be very careful when you're selecting your starting warband now by spending that money. But honestly, it's not that big a deal in the end, because when you're earning your cash from the treasure hunting you're going to end up doing, you'll be able to upgrade reasonably well, and really you only get 4 of these anyway, so there's a lot to choose from. There's 8 here, 3, 4, 9 in just the basic table, so it's a lot of opportunity. 4 of the 9, you get some flexibility, so that's what it is. Okay, now they have made a couple really interesting changes to some of the weapons. As I mentioned already, the dagger, all the same rules as before. But for everybody, so this will include the captain as well, the first dagger you give to someone does not take up an item slot. Additional daggers will. So that's a big change. Now, the two-handed weapons, those have actually now take up 2 item slots because they're larger. So no more having a wizard with a two-handed sword and 4 magic items. He's only going to be able to have 2, 3. So we're looking at crossbows and bows. Both of them, now you have to spend an item slot for the bow or crossbow, and you'll have to spend an item slot for the quiver. And the quiver is what allows you to hold those arrows, right, and crossbow bolts. So crossbows and bows take up 2 item slots as well. And this is definitely going to impact the way some wizards are built. Because I've seen a lot of wizards toting around a crossbow or bow and a two-handed sword. It gets pretty. They become their own army just in themselves. So the neat thing about the quiver is it allows you to, because it already takes up an item slot, it allows you to carry 1 magic ammunition for free. So you could, instead of having to pay an item slot for one of the magic arrows that you might have, either you enchanted or you found in the dungeon, you can have multiple of them, but only the first one does not actually take up an item slot. It goes in the quiver, which already takes up the item slot. So that's pretty good, I think. But we'll see how that plays out. Now, one thing they've also done, the armor. The armor is now light and heavy, essentially, and a shield. They don't call it leather and mail. Because that way you can get a little bit, you can model it any way you want. You know, it can be armor, heavy armor can be plate. Light armor can be leather or padded or scale. You know, whatever you feel, you know, it works. But what they did is there's a cap now. The maximum armor value you can have on any character is 15, and that is coming from any bonuses. So no matter how many times you give them a protection effect from a spell or a magic item, the maximum armor is only going to be 15. So that's definitely going to make it a little more lethal for some of those, like their Templars, especially the Knight, who used to start out with a 13, give them magic shield, magic armor, and then you give them a spell to give them a bonus to that, and now it's 16 or 17 armor, and it's hard to take them down. But now it can't go above 15. All right, that it kind of counteracts or goes also along with their now max bonus. You can no longer increase a stat through magic effects or anything, any bonuses of any type, more than plus 10. So if you have a fight plus 4 on like your treasure hunter, the max you can give him is plus 6, whether it be magic weapons, spell effects like potion of strength, or even some of the magic items you'll get up there. You cannot go beyond plus 10, all bonuses combined. So now, I guess where you can benefit here is when you've got effects out there like the storm spell, call storm, where you -1 or more to shooting. You can give 11 or plus 11 or plus 12 to a model to counteract the minuses that might be. So the net can be no more than -10 or plus 10. So your plus 12 ranger shooting, because of fighting or his shooting and all his magic and all the bonuses you can probably put in front of him, is only ever going to be plus 10, even if there are no negative modifiers. So, not bad, I think. They've added an additional little mechanic in the movement space, and that's called Run For It. Essentially, it allows the individual model to use his activation to run for it and move 3 inches in any direction, ignoring rough terrain and all that. It essentially allows those slower moving models, say ones that are wounded and are carrying treasure, who already are severely halved, to at least still be able to move 3 inches instead of 1.5, 2.5, and you'll get some movement out of them that way. So we'll have to play around with it and see how that actually impacts the game going forward. Now, they've actually added swimming as a means of moving, and they did clarify some of the following rules too. The key here with the swimming is that it assumes that all water is essentially shallow or deep, and from there you treat the kind of deep water, you can't actually wade through it, like where shallow you can, shallow would be rough ground. But if it's deep, you have to swim. And swimming is actually pretty easy. You basically make a move will roll with a target number of 5. And, look at your will. I mean, most of the wills are going to have some benefit. So 75% chance you're going to succeed just on the base roll, not including modifiers. Now, armor will actually affect it. There's -2 for light armor, -5 for heavy armor, additional -1 for carrying shield, and additional -2 for carrying treasure. All those negative modifiers add up. Anyway, if you make your roll, you activate and move normally. If you fail, you lose your activation, and you also take damage by the amount you missed the roll by, kind of inhaling water. Okay, so that's a pretty good addition. Now you can get some areas, especially like in the breeding pits scenarios, where you're more likely to run across underground streams and stuff. That could make it a lot more fun, because most of Frostgrave is, of course, frozen. Even the main rivers are all frozen, pretty much solid. So this is a nice little addition they gave in. Okay, when it comes to empowering spells, this is one of the big changes I'm really glad they made. You cannot increase the target roll higher than 18. You cannot cut more than 18, getting the value to 18, with the exception of summoning the demons. That's the only one where you can cut more. This is great because I used to hate it when we had a player a couple years ago, well, even recently, they would cut, they'd be fully healthy, and they would cut enough so that it would be impossible to make a save against the effect, like blinding light. Completely renders my character useless the entire game. I cannot stop it because I don't have Dispel Magic. And even if I did have Dispel Magic, can't cast it because it's line of sight. So that really annoyed me and a couple other players as well. So this is kind of nice. It guarantees it. Now the Malcor change where 20s automatically succeed was good, but here this is even better because it's 18 is the max. So I don't need a natural 20 to succeed. I need a roll plus my will being 18 or greater. That's a huge improvement. All right, wait. Critical hits, they basically rolled the Malcor rules into it here. So instead of doing double damage, it only does +5 damage. But still, that's not bad. It was always enough. 2 times damage was a guaranteed kill. +5 damage, it depends on the character you're hitting, whether it's a kill or not. And usually the bigger monsters, it's not an auto kill, which is kind of actually thrilling. They've added a new mechanic called canceling a spell. So prior to this, you would cast a spell, it would stay in place for the entire game, no changes, with certain exceptions like Wall and Wall of Fog, where you had a roll at the end of the turn. However, things such as the control spells, like Control Animal and Bind Demon, all those things, as well as some others that they've put in here, now you can actually spend an action, or in some cases just at the end of the turn declare you're canceling it. Because remember, for example, you can only, let's say, control one construct, right? You cast Control Construct spell, you're controlling a construct, you send it off the table with a treasure, the spell is still in effect until the end of the game. Well, now you can actually cancel that with that. I believe with that one it's an action. We'll talk about that in a separate video. You cancel it, and now you can cast Control Construct again on some other construct during the game. So that's very useful. And it's great if you happen to have, like, so let's say Bind Demon. You bind them, you send them out into the opponent's area, and you've got another one you got to deal with. Well, that other demon, you don't need to control him anymore. You can cancel that. He's now an uncontrolled creature in the middle of the opponent's line, which is, you don't have to worry about him. And now you can cast Bind Demon on the one that's going to potentially threaten you. So I think that's actually a nice mechanic they've added. So, all right. Area effect spells, they kind of clarified how this one works. When you have a group of models in combat with each other, if any one of them is within the radius of an area effect spell, all of them get hit, and all of them have a roll against them for damage. So that makes you a little less likely to throw something into that space. Because I know we had a couple players who would try to do that, and it's a great tactic, but here it's a little more risky because you're going to be able to hurt your own guys. All right. One of the things they did is the potions now this is a change they've actually incorporated. You can use take a potion, and that can use or count as your mandatory movement action. So now you can take a healing potion and then go into combat. You obviously can't swing because you're moving into combat, but at least you can take the potion, heal up, and then close, which isn't a bad thing. One thing they did clarify with the using potions is the only character that you can have that can give a potion or force a potion onto someone and have the effect like a healing potion is the apothecary. So other characters, models, cannot like give a healing potion to somebody and have it take effect immediately. They can transfer it and give it to the person, but that other person has to spend an action to still use it. So only the apothecary can basically pour it down your throat, right? So that's, I think, more of a clarification, but it's still a good one. The creature actions have been modified so that whatever they presented in the Malcore supplement is now what's in the main rulebook. It basically allows the creatures to effectively interact with things that are further away, line of sight wise. As long as it's line of sight, there's no minimum range anymore, max range anymore. And it also gives some opportunities for creatures that have a shooting attack to actually do a shooting attack. So nice rules, it's a nice change. It basically goes with expanding the bestiary. Alright, so let's kind of talk about the campaign overall. Some big changes. They basically rolled in the Malcore experience into the main rulebook now. So now you only get 40 points for a treasure. Well, it used to be 50, but now it's only 40. But you do get 40 points just for playing through the scenario. So it kind of makes up a little bit for that. You only get points for uncontrolled creatures, killing those with your warband. You don't get points for killing the opponent's wizard or your wizard doing something special with those. Of course, scenario-specific experience points are still a thing. So these are in addition to the experience points. Now, one of the things I liked about the Malcore edition was if you fail a spell cast, you still get 5 XP, instead of the full 10 for being successful. But not if the casting value was 5 or 6. So if it's really low, you really can't get experience off failing a spell. So. Okay. Now, I'm not going to put the treasure tables and things up because I'd have to make them huge for you to see all the differences. But there have been quite a number of changes on the treasure side. First change across the board is a lot of the purchase prices have changed across the board. In addition, now pretty much across the board also, it is the sale price, if you're going to sell it, is 40% of the purchase price instead of 50%. So you get less for something you're trying to sell. And this actually comes out even more strongly with grimoires and scrolls. Scrolls now only cost 100 gold, 200 gold, which is actually pretty good. It's instead of 400. But they only cost, you only get 30 for selling them. Now, grimoires still cost 500, and you can sell them now for 200 instead of 250. So we'll go ahead and talk more about this grimoire spell, right grimoire and right scroll spells later in that particular sigillus school. But for now, just know the prices have changed, and you don't quite get as much for your gold when you sell something. And I think that's a pretty good thing. But they also tweaked the treasure table in such a way that most of the rows actually now give you gold as well. And in fact, they generally give you more gold than they had before. I'm going to go ahead and go through a couple things here that are changed as far as the actual magic items themselves. Again, looking at the actual tables is kind of hard to show how things change, but notice that, or just know that they've increased the likelihood of you getting gold across the board, which is actually a good thing. Sometimes you get some good magic items and you don't want to sell them, but then you're strapped for cash, and a lot of times the players get ahead of themselves. Some of the players get ahead of others because they just get luckier with the cash. So, all right. So here's some changes with the magic items that I think are important. We're going to go through the magic item changes. Let's start with the potions. They've taken the folio book, the supplement, the potion tables out of there, and like he wrote in the folio, the potion tables there were the ones that he really intended to go in the main book. He just didn't have the time to get it out in there, I guess. So now in the main rule book, now you have 2 potion tables, standard and greater potions. And both of these have some cost changes involved, and the selling price is different, definitely for these. They've also changed some of the effects of some of these spells. So let's take a quick look at some of those. So, first one, Cordial of Clear Sight, now allows you to immediately remove an illusionary soldier if you move into combat with them. That was not something it allowed you before. It just allowed you to, basically see invisible, really. Elixir of Speed, now it gives you +2 speed, but there's a cap. Maximum speed you can have in a model is 9 inches. So you can't give this to you can't give it to your apothecary and have them give your warhound a dose of this potion of speed and make them a 10-inch move, okay? I don't know why you'd want to do that, but again, it's something you might want to do. You can't do that anymore. But again, similarly, if you have a potion of, or not, sorry, a spell of, Chronomancer spells of putting Fleet Feet, give them some bonus there. You take a treasure hunter or a thief up to from 7 to 9 right away. Potion of speed can do nothing. It won't bump it up to 11. So you're kind of stuck. You can only advance so far in some of these bonuses. Now, ethereal vacuum is kind of a neat. It's like kind of like a genie bottle almost, where if there's an ethereal undead around, you can suck them into this, however many failed or saved, into this thing, and now all of a sudden you have a wraith bottle, which allows you to basically throw it as a grenade, and boom, there's a wraith. Uncontrolled character, I believe. But now, in this ethereal vacuum, if you throw it, or you open it and try to suck in these ethereal beings, and none of them are sucked in when you activate it, the bottle's destroyed. So it's almost a one-use thing. It's either you use it and you're successful and you get a wraith bottle, or you use it and you lose it because it didn't succeed. So it's kind of an iffy thing there. All right. The Filter of Fury no longer has a 12-inch line of sight cap. If you can see the opponent, you have to charge toward them, move toward them as fast as you can. Even if they're all the way across the table, if it's the only one you can see, you've got to go toward them. So I actually think it's a good thing. Potion of Fire Breath. This is kind of neat. You can't. This is the one potion where if you take it, you cannot use that in place of your move action. So even though normally potions you can, this one you can't. Potion of Invulnerability. This is kind of neat. This is one that basically made you immune to normal weapons. Now it has a duration almost. Essentially, at the end of every turn, you roll a d20. On a 17 plus, the effect wears off. Oh, sorry, it's not at the end of the turn. It's at the beginning of your activation. Every time you activate, you roll that, and on a 17 plus, the effect goes away. So it could be dangerous if you're in the middle of combat and you activate, and then boom, it's gone, and now you can't really take another potion of invulnerability because you're in combat already, and you can't take potions while you're in combat. All right, anyway, then there's Iron Mind. I like this one. Now it is +5 to your will, so that's a nice big improvement for that particular potion. On the weapons and armor side, there's been some changes here. What they did is they took away, for hand weapons and two-handed weapons, they took away the +2 fight magic items. They're gone. Instead, they've been replaced with +2 will magic items. So everybody's going to have an opinion on that one, I'm sure. Personally, I think I like that because I've had so many times when we had players would save up, hoard that early cash just by a couple soldiers, and then spend the money on getting +2 fight weapons. And all of a sudden, they've got good warbands, strong fighting warbands, jumping ahead of the rest. So I think this is probably a good thing, and especially since your enchant item, enchant weapon spell can only give you a +1 anyway, and you can embed that. So I kind of like this a bit. Part of me is not liking it because I kind of like the original idea that, well, there were some of these +2 weapons circulating around. They were made in the past, back when magic was something else, and we've lost the ability to get those strong weapons now. The best we can do is +1, right? So you kind of lose a little bit of lore there, but I don't know. You can always throw in your own magic items if you want, if you really miss the +2s that much. The crossbow and bow, they only now have a +2 damage and a +1 shoot, basically. Now, the heavy armor, they've actually changed it so that it's +1 armor, but they replaced it, the +1 armor, heavy armor, because again, if you got heavy armor, you're already going from a 12 to a 13 right there. A shield gives you 14, +1 shield is, you're basically getting too close to that cap of 15, right? 15 armor by having a +1 armor, because there's spells that can give you plus defense. But what they do here is they replace that +1 armor with elemental absorption. So essentially, it protects you from basically elemental spells, which is a good thing. We'll talk about that in a different video. I'm going to cover special abilities later. The staff, they got rid of the +2 damage staff. However, they have added a Cloak of Night. Now this is kind of neat. Cloak of Night. Let me read it straight from the book. I don't want to get it wrong. That gives you elemental absorption. So again, it helps you get away from those elemental spells and not take damage, the same kind of damage. Let me go ahead and explain what that is right now. It's basically the elemental absorption. You cut your damage taken by half, rounding up. So that's actually a pretty big deal. That's going to definitely help keep those elementalists a little less effective when you're equipped with this. Now remember, spellcasters can't wear armor, so there's that. Let's see now some of the other magic items they've got here. The Ring of Transference, okay, is something that's new. That is, let me read it straight off here. Oops, they don't have it listed. It's actually it's in the, but there's no entry for it. So I'll have to look that up and see what the Ring of Transference actually does. Okay. So I'll put it right here. This is what it means. All right, now the Orb of Power, they dropped it from 8 charges down to 6, but otherwise it works the same. There's a Candle of Summoning that used to be there. It's gone now. They actually put the Candle of Summoning, they threw it over into a base upgrade, which I think is probably a good thing for it. A Construct Hammer they added. The Construct Hammer was part of the Folio, one of the Golem. There's basically a campaign, if you will, 3-scenario campaign for enchanters, and within there is a Construct Hammer. It's one of the new magic items. They put that right here in this book, and it basically allows you to give your you fit it to a medium or a large construct. Now it can be actually given to it after you create the construct. It used to be you had to create it with that. So if you had a construct and you picked up the hammer, you had to make a new construct to use the hammer. But now you can give it to them. But you can only give them one hammer, so you can't wield 2 hammers. So essentially it gives them a magic item and a +1 damage. So that's going to make large constructs even more damaging, because you'll see that as we get to the bestiary part, again, it's a separate video, we're looking at +3 damage at that point. Okay. Next one is the Belt of Animal Repellents. They got rid of that. I'm kind of sad about that, because I think it was a pretty good magic item, and it did have some uses. One of the reasons they took it out, though, is it was situational. Again, feel free to keep it in if you want, but it's not in the tables now. Now, the Wand of Light, however, has been added. Now, the Wand of Light is once per game. A figure carrying the wand may roll 2 dice when attempting to cast a spell and choose which one to use. So it's not a one-use item as far as, one use that's gone. It's something you can do once per game. You make the call, roll the dice. You have to call before you make the decision before you make the dice roll, because you're going to roll 1 die to cast or the 2 dice. Okay. They actually got rid of the Drinking Horn of Healing. Honestly, don't know why. It probably wasn't heavily utilized. Feedback probably was that people just sold it for the cash, because you can have potions all over the place. But I'm not certain why. Again, if you want to put it back in, feel free. The Banner of Courage is completely gone now, and the Wand of Power was actually added. The Wand of Power is essentially a wand that has, just like a staff. It has a charge on it, so you can empower one of your spells with that wand once per game. And of course, it's going to recharge at the end of the game. It's kind of like a Staff of Power, but it's a Wand of Power. A little more flavorful, really, is what that is. Okay. Last thing I want to kind of go over really before we get into like the bestiary, or I'll do a bestiary in the next video. But let's just talk about bases this time. Quite a few changes in the bases space. Okay, they're subtle, but they're there. The inn. This is a big one. It no longer gives you +1 soldiers in the game. It allows you to have 1 extra soldier slot in your warband, but you can still only field 8 models, 8 soldiers, plus the apprentice and the wizard. Okay, what this does mean though is you can buy or hire an extra guy and just not use him in the game. But when one of your other soldiers takes a wound, he has to skip a game, you can bring this other guy back in. Okay, so, or for example, let's say bring a tunnel fighter in. No sense bringing a tunnel fighter into a normal, mostly of the time, a normal Frostgrave scenario, but if you happen to be going into the breeding pits type space underground, tunnel fighter you might want to bring. Same with a demon hunter. If you may want to run demon hunter occasionally, but not all the time. So again, it gives you a little bit of flexibility in your warband. But again, you no longer have that +1 soldier on the table. The next one's the temple. It's a big change here. It actually gives you +3 to casting your miraculous cure. Okay. In addition, this is the cool thing. You get to roll a die after every game, and on a 16+, you get a free potion of healing. So that's always useful. But that +3 to miraculous healing is a big deal. And when we talk about the thaumaturgy spells in the later video, we'll see why this actually could be a big deal. All right, next is the crypt. There's a new spell we'll get to in the Necromancer review called Animate Skull, and this particular crypt will also work on that in addition to your Raise Zombie spell. So it gives you the same +2 bonus for all of them. Tower is essentially also works on awareness spell. So it used to be it's the +2 casting for Reveal Secret. It's also for awareness. The treasury, it's kind of good. It's actually not a whole lot of change, but it's pretty much double the chance to find gold and good stuff. So it used to be on a 19, you get some gold crowns, and on a 20, you would get 100 gold crowns, right? Now, if you roll, when you roll a die on a 2 to a 16, again, a 1 is a fail, but 2 to 16, you get that many gold crowns. But on a 17 or 18, you get 100 gold crowns. Added to the number. So it'd be, let's say, roll a 7 and an 18, you get 118 gold. Okay. If a 19 or 20 used to just be 20, but a 19 or a 20 now, you actually find a treasure, and so you roll it as if it were a treasure on the table. So it basically doubles your chances of finding good, money and treasure. Next is the brewery. Here, the brewery gives essentially all of your soldiers start with +1 will. In addition, you get at the end of the game you get 20 gold crown instead of 10 gold for selling off the excess beer stock, right? So a little bit extra cash, you never hurt anybody. Finally, the library. It essentially increases the chance of finding a grimoire or a scroll, and that's always good. So big changes there, I think, making the base a little bit more useful and kind of nerfing the inn a little bit. Now the base resources, these are the upgrades you can get. The kennel now also applies not just to the warhounds, but also applies to animal companions. So you can actually have an extra animal companion if you happen to have a wizard that has that spell and likes to use animal companions. The scriptorium, scriptorium gives you a +1 to scrolls now, only to writing scrolls. And I'll give you a spoiler here, it's because you can't create grimoires anymore. We'll talk about that in the Sigilist page or video. All right, now is Celestial Telescope. What it does, it used to give you a +2 to your initiative die roll. Now it's +5 once per game. That's a huge improvement. There is now the carrier pigeons. I like this a lot better. Carrier pigeons used to reduce the cost of a soldier by 1 gold crown. Big deal. You pay quite a bit of money for it, and you only saved 1. But now you save 10 gold per guy. So basically, after cost 50 gold. After hiring 5 different soldiers, you've already saved your money. You've recouped your investment. All right. Then the arcane candle now only applies to the casting roll for control demon outside of the game. Okay. The summoning circle has also been added, summoning candle has also been added. Now this gives you a +1 to casting the summon demon spell out of game. So essentially, when you have the summon demon spell, you summon the demon before the game. You have to successfully summon the demon and successfully control it. So successfully cast that. So now you have 2 separate base upgrades that allow you to give a bonus to each spell. That's a change from the previous edition. Now, the last thing I'll cover before we jump into a different video completely is we're going to deal with the Frostgrave supplements appendix in the back. They kind of go through how do these interact with the supplements, and essentially there are no changes across the board. There's a simple change in the breeding pits, essentially saying that the rule clarification part of the tunnel fighter doesn't exist anymore because of the rule change. I don't offhand know what that is. I didn't bother looking it up. They changed the control demon spell to bind demon, just a wording change, but they're the same thing. They do say that the 2 new spells that were added in the Forgotten Pacts book, those were never. There's no grimoire available in the list. But you can always start with it with one of those spells, or you can purchase a grimoire for it. Okay, that's the little change they made there. There's all the rules changes for the Frostgrave folio have been rolled into here, and all of the Malcor rules updates have been rolled into here. For the ulterior motives, they essentially say ignore the way you place treasure in the ulterior motives, because again they changed the way you put treasures down. There's now 1 in the center, and then each player puts down 2. I did forget to mention that earlier on. Again, because that was actually from Malcor. They kind of again rolled those in, and I tried not to cover those changes, though I probably should have. The Wizards Conclave have just some snares might be tweaked, but there's no major changes. And Perilous Dark, no changes needed. So there you go. Pretty much all the supplements are still valid. You just have a different new book to go from. Excellent. I think that's very good planning and helps the players feel like they haven't wasted their money from the last couple of years. So kudos to Osprey and to Joseph McCullough. So I hope this has been useful. I hadn't seen any other in-depth reviews like this, and I thought it would be a good idea to just get this out there. The next video you'll be seeing will be kind of a review of the changes in the beast here. It'll be much shorter because some people may care, some might not. And then after that, we're going to see. I'll do one video for each of the different magic schools, and we'll see what did change in the spells themselves. All right, so hope you enjoyed this. Share, like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.